for, help me explain that, that's the wellness for the,
Emotional wellness.
yes, it is. It is page 4 on the packet side. And that should kind of explain everything on that side of it. And if y'all have questions later down the road, I know the sheriff will be happy to answer any of them, so.
This is kind of my idea.
So if you go back,
I don't have a problem. I just didn't, I wanted to understand what it was. I didn't see it. Thank you.
thank you for asking. So if you go back to the line item, 1001, salary full-time. So back in, I'll just pull the ordinance. So the ordinance was 230081, which is, I came in here, I want to say it's in June. It may have been in July, about all the officers going to that 207K stuff, how the enforcement division, because we have an enforcement division and then we have a detention division. So the detention is, I would say there's probably 85% of them are already on a 207K, and the 207K is somebody that we can work them up to 2,236 hours a year and pay them straight time. Before, it was only a 2,080 hours. So all of our patrol officers, and about 15-20% of the detention side was not 207K. They were 207K exempt, but they were not utilized as the 86 hours of pay period, so that 2236. So I came in here in June, July timeframe, and asked for an increase to our budget based on 20 pay periods left in the year. And in that whole process, there was several line items on the salary side of the budget. There was several people that we've noticed that the line item itself was $1 off, $7 off over a year, which was fractions of a cent. So when I prepare the budget to the nearest penny. So if you make $5.10, or $5.09, 0.8, I round it to $5.10 and go from there. So I guess it caused an issue on some stuff. So that's why I had to clean all that up when we came back in here and asked for the 207K, and I included the $7 here, $2 here for different line items to kind of fix my mistake from last year's budget side. So with that, like I said, that only included 20 pay periods. So this budget includes the 26 pay periods. So it affects 13,572 hours. So with the amount of people that it affects, which is the 87 slots that are just on the enforcement side that have went to 207K, 26 pay periods, 6 hours is 13,572 multiplied by their hourly rate. So the budget number that I actually are budgeted for the 2024 is maybe a little bit different than what's up there, 7,033,000, and I've got 7.6 million. So it's about a $500,000 difference, $600,000 difference, and a lot of that has to do with that 207K time. And not only that, all the benefits and stuff that are included on that salary line item is calculated off that 7.6, if that makes sense. So some of the benefits is like, if you take like Social Security matching is 7.65, and you multiply that by your full-time salary and whatever your part-time, your overtime, add all them up and you multiply that 7.65, that's how you come up with that number pretty much. So it's based on, if you use the number, I guess what I'm trying to say, if you use the number that is the 7.3, and you're like, my math ain't adding up to that, it won't add up. Because what I have included on this is this 87 slots being on that 207K time at 2236, and that's why we had a turn back of 300,000 this last quarter, because we know our guys ain't gonna get 6 hours of pay period. But what I don't know is which guy's gonna get it and which guy ain't gonna get it. So I gotta budget it all for them to get it, but that money gets turned back. Does that make sense, or did I confuse? Because I confused myself. So, and I think there's a note on there, is at the top of the, yeah, I mean, he's got the 7.6 on there to avoid possible confusion. The original submission was 7.6. So that is the submission that we're originally submitting to you all, because that's, I don't know if my patrol officer is going to get 86 hours that week, and then that line item and that salary line item is going to be over, and then I got to come back and say X. So, if that makes sense. I know Willie's got a question.
Justice Slimming?
Thank you. The question, the 87 positions that you're holding, does that go back to your communications over here? You got to pay on them 87 that's not there?
So the communications is
You said something about it figures in with the people.
so the 87 people is just our patrol people. So on the enforcement side, we have 122 positions. Don't quote me on this, about 16 of them are probably civilian positions. The other ones are communications. I think there's 18 or 20 in communications or something like that. That does not include them because they are not 207K exempt. So they're based on a 20, 80-hour pay period.
Justice Lyons?
I guess the simple question is, so do we expect the 7033 request for 2024 to be modified to the 7.6 in the final budget that we're going to look at? What's the expectation for the final number ultimately?
My request for the final number would be the 7.6.
Okay,
And that would include the 207K time.
okay.
And if you'll go to the salaries on the enforcement side up there. So. Yes. So this is the salary side that y'all should have on your computers.
It should be the next tab over if you're looking at the tabs along the bottom.
So you'll see in column F, I believe, 2024. My computer's not there. Column F, 2024 salary from the sheriff. So that's the actual request. So this number here, from my understanding, this is what Central Square Pool.
As much as it's going to be hard, you're going to have to stay at the microphone. I apologize about that.
What column is that? So column I is what Central Square pulls, and that is the accurate one for the salary base as of today, per se. But I would say that the budget request would be the column F, because it does not include all of the 26 pay periods with the extra 6 hours per pay period. And that's on both sides of the house as far as the sheriffs and the jail. Like I said, we had about 15, probably 15% of the jail personnel that was moved over to that. And if we don't have any more questions on the jail, or on the sheriffs, we'll go to 0428, work release. Yes. Unless y'all have any questions from the jail side. And we won't be on here long, I hope. This is a quick one. Volleyball, my daughter's playing tonight. Hope they win. Huh? Talk faster. It started earlier today. It started at 4 o'clock. I still had to work.
Is everybody there? We're ready to roll, or? Like, we go ahead.
So this fund is based on our work release program that we kind of held back a little bit during COVID, but we're slowly working it back up. This fund is generated based on hours that we work picking up trash, people that get sentenced to work release, stuff like that. So it's a flat year over year. Typically on that cost, they say, hey, this is what we're projecting on it. So it stayed flat year over year. So there's really nothing to explain unless y'all have questions. No questions? We'll go to the communication budget. Communication budget is 3014. And in case y'all haven't heard, we're consolidating. It's exciting. So we start our, thanks to John Luther. Now he's got to buy me ice cream because I mentioned his name. But we're starting our training process on how to run the new radios tomorrow. So we're excited for that. The communication budget, you will see some increases here and there. So the small equipment, because we're obviously, everybody, so line item 2002, there is an increase in that. Obviously, the consolidation, new room, stuff like that, that was not, that we haven't had in the past. Obviously, the new equipment that we got to put in there, this kind of offsets some of that stuff that we didn't have budgeted for this year that we can get at the first of the year. The other ones is some meals and lodging. So one of the big things on the meals and lodging side of it is some of the training aspects that they'll have to go through, some of the EMD training. Just for the EMD training, it's about $10,000 for all of our dispatchers. So some of that stuff is why that's got a big increase on the training. So hopefully it won't be that much next year because hopefully we'll get them all trained this year. But that is a self-funded budget as well. And you'll see down there on, of course, I mean, y'all have the capital stuff like on the sheriff's side, and we are asking for some vehicles. This one is a C attachment. It is a server that we need to replace out every so often. Jack's real good about keeping all of our computers cycled, servers and stuff like that at the end of life. So it's just time to replace one of them. So that's going to be on the C attached. And the server is 12 and the other stuff is 11.
Justice Dennis?
And thank you, Judge. it's kind of a comment more than it is a question, but when I see flat rates where you go from 23 to 24 and it stays the same, there's nothing staying the same. I mean, everything's so inflated right now and being more inflated that it's not gonna cost the same thing next year, yet you're saying that it is, otherwise it's flat.
It's flat to that budget because that's all that they project that budget will bring in. So we try to utilize what we can out of them specialized budgets, and what we can't utilize may have to roll over to something else. So we may take copy paper out of the jail budget for dispatch, because we can't take it out of this budget because it only gives us X amount a year. So they only project that we only get so much.
It's a special funding source.
Okay? I think okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's special revenue attached to this budget. It's not coming out of just regular general fund, if you will.
Okay,
And so, and a lot of these, like the boating fund that we'll come across, some of these budgets have stipulations of what we can take out. So we may move something from X over that budget and take it out, but now that we were taking something else that's cost more, so then we'll have to kind of move it around to make sure that that line item may stay flat year over year. But you're right, nothing's flat year over year this year. I mean, the average cost is a good percentage increase, but I can't take any money from where we don't have it, and we don't have any more than what we budgeted for this.
okay.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. Captain McConnell, can you just share with us the fund that this budget will come out of? I mean, it is out of what revenues it's coming in? This isn't out of county general.
No, this is a self-generated fund. I think a lot of this has to do,
Just so we'll know, I mean, because
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
this fund is generated by civil papers that we serve. A certain portion of that fee that we charge to serve civil papers goes into the radio communication and facility equipment fund, and then the jail telephone commission from the inmate telephones goes into that fund. And so those are the two revenue streams that fund that communications and facilities equipment fund. So it
fees
doesn't.
collected.
Ma'am.
So these are fees collected.
Yes, fees collected goes into the special fund to be able to use for various things. It never
I think
gets
that's
very
good.
big. We try to utilize it for a lot of our communication equipment and computer equipment, things like that, to keep from having to get it out of general fund.
Okay, and just add, for point of clarification, the restrictions and the guidelines of how you can use this information comes from the state, or was it ordinance by?
Well, there's the same line items that are in the regular budget, but we can only appropriate the money that it generates, so we can't appropriate more than what Bobby anticipates will come in to
Okay.
that fund. So
Okay.
that's why there's a limit on it, on what we can use it for, just
Okay.
because of the amount of revenue that comes in.
Okay, so that's the balance of it all. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Judge.
Justice Lemming?
Thank you, Judge. I was gonna ask just Jay, Jay, when did they quit taking the cell phone money and putting it into communications for the sheriffs and the law enforcement and communications like the AWIN radios? Was that last year?
I think the communication, the cell phone money, I think went over to John Luther's side of the revenue stream. I don't think we ever got any in our communications fund, but some of it would go into his 911 fund.
Right. Didn't
To-
we
and it-
lose that though last year?
Yeah, I
Didn't
think the
that- didn't
state, whenever they
the
decided
state
to
took
do
that money
consolidation,
and kept
they took all that money, and now they're going to distribute it out as they see fit.
It's kind of going through the AWIN system too. so
Right,
now-
yeah, I think it helps support that.
Okay, thank you.
any more questions on?
Justice Rios Stafford?
Sorry.
Just so part of this fund comes from it comes from the fees from serving court papers, right? And part of it comes from the fees from detainees using the telephone at the jail? Is that what I heard correctly?
Correct.
How much are we charging for that? Or what, like per call? Or how does that fee work? Do we know?
I do not know the fee cost.
20 minutes for $5.
20 minutes for $5.
20 minutes for $5. Okay, all right, thank you.
And I don't know what the fee of our fee we get of that. I don't know if it's a penny or, I don't know what that is. If that's gonna be another question. So it generates about 20,000 a month.
Justice Coger?
Okay, well, that sort of answered my question. I'm looking at the treasurer's projected income, and under the jail fund, how would I see which one of that is for the telephone, for the communications? I mean,
Well, the communications would have it separate. I don't know what, as far as what you're looking at, as far as what the projections are. I mean, I'd probably reach out to.
okay, I see it. Prisoner Phone Service Commission, 220,000. It's not, it's on Bobby's projection that we had last month. Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, no other questions. We'll go to the jail maintenance, which is 0127. So we'll start off on, yes.
Are we good? We need to hold up a minute, or are we there? I think we're good, Captain McCall.
All right. On the jail maintenance, some of the big costs is going to be the, turn my paper over. Line item 2020, building maintenance and supplies, you'll see a big increase of 32,000, which is 640%. So there's a waterproofing that we have to do every 5 years, and it's that time. So we do have a little bit more of a justification as far as some of his big increases on page 13 and 14. Actually, the waterproofing's on page 18. Kind of gives a base on that. It's a little bit more reading material when you get bored on that. But that's going to be a big increase as far as theirs go. They are seeing an increase on the, I think the utilities, we're seeing about a 5% increase. Of course, the fire coverage, the 3052 line item, that's based on the invoice from July. So that was the most recent invoice, so it's increased $266,000. So that's going to be a big increase on his. Other professional services, you'll see a big increase of $148,000. 130 of that is going to be the waterproofing. That's to pay someone to get it done. I think that's the only big increases that I see on his, unless y'all have any questions on that.
Justice Coger?
Yes, this is thank you. This is probably a question for the judge, but will the insurance, will fire and extended coverage, will that be put out for bids?
I mean, it's essentially put out to bid by its very nature, because we have an independent insurance company that works for us. I mean, they go and shop this premium out.
Brown & Brown shops it out?
They're an independent insurance agent. All that being said, we are not an attractive spouse in the insurance company world. We have a lot of property in a very condensed area, and we have a horrible history of losses. So I'm just trying to give you feedback to say it's not like we get a lot of, necessarily a lot of interest in our insurance. We're continue to work on it. We have other people now we're trying to work with to see if there's any alternatives, but it's not looking very good, so.
On this, also on the backside, so our maintenance division, Corey, he does a pretty good job on rotating our AC units, and it's been like 100 and something degrees this week, so they've been pretty busy. ACs run all the time, so we put in our budget every year to replace about 5 to 6, depending upon the cost, and that's in there as well as far as a capital expense, because the line items are a capital expense and the upgrade to the fire alarm system, but you'll see that in there as far as a justification, but that they are capital expenses, but it is a ongoing cost, or that is a operational cost that we'll have to have for that side. And if you go to the handout that we gave you as far as 13, 14, and 15, them handouts, you'll see it's the jail operation and maintenance justifications. So if you see something on the jail budget that says see attached, these are the pages that you would go to get that, how we came up with that number, if that makes sense. I've just got it in my book after the maintenance side. Do we have any questions on the jail maintenance? If not, we'll go to jail operations. Which is 0418. If you go to the personnel cost, it's going to be the same thing as far as the sheriff's side goes. The submitted side, as far as the 12 million and some change, or that's not the yeah, the 12 million and some change. The stuff in the green, that's going to be the ask as far as that goes. We do have 203 positions on the jail budget, where we have 122 on the other side. Kind of going through the supplies. Supplies is the 2000s. So I think everything should be, I don't think there's anything really that kicks out, or overall on the supplies is about a 4% increase of roughly 78,000. We do have some big ticket items as far as the food cost. That's the detainee meals. And we have seen an increase of that about 9%. I don't see anything else that really jumps out on my side unless someone has questions. If not, we'll go down to the line items 3,000, which is other services. Other professional services, you'll see a increase for that $20,000 as far as the justification that it's in your packet is with the wellness side. And I think that's the that in the sun-dry insurance is going to be the other big increase, about 30,000. But other than that, there's nothing besides the HR software, the HCM software on that bottom side. And we do have some capital expenses that we are requesting on that. So I think overall, I think that budget was about a 6% increase. Unless y'all have some questions on that side. If not, we're like halfway there.
I'm sorry, I'm sleeping on the job over. Justice Eki? I'm sorry. My bad again. I'm reading names and saying names. Justice Coger, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Judge. Back up on line item 3006, medical dental hospital. I'm hoping that we're going to bid that medical contract out this time. We're getting close to the end. I mean, we have to give, like 60 days notice, but is that in your plan to bid that out, Sheriff?
No, it's not this year, but we will try to put something out early next year to give people ample time to, mid-year to give people ample time to come up with a suitable bid, but we don't have plans to bid it this year.
But my thing about that is, how do we know that we're getting the best deal for our taxpayer dollars if we don't give, if we don't explore what's out there?
Our plan is to try to explore that next year, but this is our first year on this new contract.
But we have plenty of time to start now, no?
My only concern to that would be the budget process is due in July, so I'd have to provide a number, and the number that I was able to provide at that time was the current contract. So, I mean, I would suggest, if we look at, try to redo something, my recommendation would be before the budget process, so that we don't have to, as the judge used to say, hit that moving target.
Okay. Talking about the contract too, the co-pays that the incarcerated people have to pay, it's like $20 for, I think initially, isn't it? And then there's a scale for like $10 for medication. And I know, working in the nonprofit, I know that there's a lot of people in the jail who just can't afford that. And I realize that they still get medical treatment, even if they can't afford it.
Correct.
But in looking at the treasurer's projected income, he projects that that's just $35,000 income, if I'm reading that correctly, that we get. It says prisoner commissary medical, $35,000. I'm just wondering if we could think about maybe doing away with that copay or reducing it significantly, so it wouldn't be such a burden. Because I know families that go into debt to pay that. Is that something you would be open to?
I think,
Discuss it at our next county services committee meeting.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I said we can,
Oh, okay.
and see if it's something that the court is interested in doing.
Well, the state of Arkansas charges $5 copay, and that's a lot more. I mean, we charge a lot more, and I just know that it's a real burden. And also, I think it keeps people from seeking medical care instead of, and that's not good, because people get sicker and they spread if they're sick, it spreads, and then.
Just a second. You gotta cue your mic. I've got a point of order from Justice Eki. Justice Eki?
Yes, Judge, I believe that Sheriff Cantrell said that they would discuss and be open at the next county services. So to continue on and comparing the state to the county is not germane to what we're doing. All that discussion can be made at the county services committee meeting.
Thank you, Justice Eki. Justice Coger, will you consider that, please?
No, I won't, Judge. I'd like you to rule on it. What I'm talking about affects the budget, and how do I know it's even going to come up on county services? So I'd like you to rule on that, please.
I rule that you're out of order. I want to respect what Sheriff Cantrell just said. He's open to discuss that. They're not prepared to discuss it tonight. They're here to discuss the budget.
Well, I request an appeal of your ruling, Judge.
Okay? And this will go to the body as a vote. We're going to do this as a show of hands. A yes is a raise your hand. That'll sustain my ruling. A no vote, we'll have another show of hands for that. Will overrule me. So with that, who votes to sustain the ruling? Vote against to overrule the ruling? Do you have any other discussion? Justice Rio Stafford?
Just a quick point of order, according to the Roberts rules, you're supposed to allow discussion before the vote.
We actually looked that up. We were wrong in the last meeting, and we thought you corrected us, and we now have looked that up. The debate is not debatable. And that makes sense to me, because you can understand the tailspin we were entered into last time when we were point of ordering the point of orders, and, I mean, that only makes sense, right? I mean, that troubled me, so we went back and looked it up, so anyways,
I'll send you my findings over email.
I invite it. Justice Coger, do you have any germane topics now?
I'd just like to say that because someone doesn't like what I have to say.
Okay, well,
doesn't
that's
mean
not
it's true.
germane to what we're saying. Captain McConnell, please continue. Continue. Justice Coger, there's not a point of order. I asked you to comply with what the body in my ruling was. You very much cannot do that. It depends on. Captain McConnell, go ahead.
So as far as the jail budget goes, general supplies, other professional services, let me get where I'm supposed to be getting. I did talk about the software increase with the HMC, and they do have a couple of capital line items as far as their budget goes on their request, but you'll see that as far as the attachments. And like I said, as far as you see any comments out there to the side that says "see attached," they will be on the maintenance side where it says the operation and maintenance. And they also have their justifications that should be page 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and their vehicle stuff 26.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you. Just the confirmation of an assumption. I see several entries across the budget that talks about, usually in the paint and metal area, that maintenance on the range. So is the assumption that basically you take the total costs and spread it across the different departments based on number of people, et cetera? But some calculation. No,
yes.
I'm not trying
I
to
mean,
get into it.
yes,
But
a lot of that
basically, you're
stuff-
spreading that across all departments versus it being in one. somewhere.
Correct. A
Okay,
lot of
thank
that
you.
stuff will split 50-50 and kind of go from there on that side of it. So you'll see small increases on the 50-50 cost.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. What happens if if a person in the jail has a deficit in their trust account?
As far as what?
Like if they have there's a deficit, like in their trust account, someone puts money in their account, but would they be, and they spent more than would there be what would happen if they had a deficit?
I guess if they have a deficit, I guess they'd have a deficit.
They have to what?
You're talking about if their account goes in the negative?
Yes, uh-huh.
I would assume that they would be in the negative, but that it does not limit them from treatments, medical, or stuff like that, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. So would that deficit follow them, though, if they came back in the jail? Say they had a $100 deficit, then they got rearrested, and so would that deficit follow them?
I would assume so, but
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. One other question, back on communications. Do nonprofits have to pay to communicate with people in the jail?
do nonprofits have to communicate? pay to
Like returning
communicate?
home?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. Sheriff, do you know that?
Public defenders and bondsmen are the ones that give free communications.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Captain McConnell, I think we're good again.
All right, we'll move on to looks like we've got 3 left, almost there. Boating safety, which is 3019. So we talked about the funds, boating safety, 3019. So this is a fund that is generated off of boat registration, stuff like that. The primary use for this is any of the lake patrol that we, or boating
Oh,
safety.
but I apologize. Thank you.
Sorry. My wife ain't here to correct me on stuff. So this boating safety fund, boating with a B, is generated off the registration for your boats. We utilize this for any boat patrols that we do, boat maintenance that we have. We do have a dive team. I've been on the dive team for a long time. And so we utilize our dive team when people come up missing and stuff like that. So this is usually what is kind of generated throughout the year as far as projection. And the boating safety fund may have more in that budget, but it is only used for that stuff. So I asked our dive team members, hey, what do you think we're going to use? And whatever they tell me they think they're going to use as far as classes, that's what we kind of budget out. So with that being said, we're pretty much staying flat year over year on this cost as well. Not saying the cost hasn't went up, but we have got new dry suits, so we may not need a new dry suit this year. We've got one diver that's fixing to be a master diver, so we can do our PADI certifications in-house. Some of y'all may know him, Selvey from upstairs. He's fixing to be a master diver. We're sending him some classes this year, so a lot of that in-house training or a lot of that cost that we may pay out, he can help train some of our new divers and stuff, so he's a big asset to our dive team, and we got a pretty good team on our side. So we try to keep that pretty reasonable on that because we never know when we got to replace a boat. So if we don't have any questions on that, we'll go to the federal drug fund, which is 3404. Correction, it's going to be the state drug fund, 3404. Yes. So a lot of these funds come out of our canines that we have, canine maintenance, anytime one of them gets hurt, whatever, hospital bills, stuff like that, tracking, some of the tracking software for them. A lot of that stuff comes out of there, but there is no change on that cost as far as the year-over-year cost. If you have no questions there, we can go to the final. It is going to be 3405 federal. And there's no change on that. Unless anyone has any direct questions on them. So that is all the budgets, but I do want to kind of emphasize on some of the stuff that we will be asking for in the packets as far as our capital stuff goes. You may look at it and say 11 vehicles is a lot on the enforcement side, but in 2018, we got granted 8 new positions. So as far as the cycling of vehicles, that's why that is so many, or appears to be so many of 11 vehicles, because that rotation of them vehicles that we got back then is mileage and all that, and the wear and tear on them are needing to be cycled out. On that, I did change over as far as how we did stuff, because they wanted the or the capital stuff out separate. So there is, you'll notice that on the vehicle justifications, you'll see an additional parts and repairs cost and other professional service cost. So that would have to be included. That's not included in the budget, is what I'm trying to say. So when you look at that total number for everything, it would be the $560,000 for the vehicles, $99,000 for parts and repairs. Parts and repairs is going to be the equipment that we have to put in these vehicles. And other professional services. some of you might ask, why don't we use the equipment that's in the other vehicles? Well, the vehicles that we rotate out, different body styles, so cages won't fit. So we have to put new equipment in there. So we try to reutilize anything we can, but if we reutilized everything, we'd still have the little bubble lights that we used to have back when I first started. Some of that stuff is just not practical. So you'll notice stuff like that as far as our capital expense goes on that. I know just some stuff off the top of my head. I know the maintenance division, we have 2 people working in our maintenance division. They're asking for another personnel in the maintenance division. And I know our jail is asking for another sergeant's position inside the transport division. I think they have, the justification says it. I think they have like 18 or 20 people they try to supervise in there with 1 sergeant. And she is very greatly appreciative, but well overreached and span of control's enormous over there. So you can imagine having people go to California and all over the place. She's got to keep track of them. So there is some justifications, but if y'all have any questions on the justification, I'm assuming we'll probably have another one later down the road as far as justifications go, but we just kind of want to toss everything kind of out there for y'all. And if we have no questions on the budget, I'm going to turn it back over to the sheriff. Thank you all.
Justice Fleming, I'm sorry, I just saw you. Did you have a question?
Overall, just run me down, it was how many million last year, and it's gonna be about 1,500,000. Just tell me exactly
What was your question? I'm sorry, sir.
the total amount for increases for '24. I seen it in here somewhere, but I've tried to come back to it, but I never did. I seen it up in the corner there somewhere, and it was like 6 million, and then, or 16 million, it was
So-
like 13, or how many,
So if you look at,
look at where?
well, I think it's on my page. I have that number in case anybody asks me that number.
Well, that's,
All inclusive on the
Yes.
sheriff's budget, if we had the 11 vehicles and the CID machine that's supposed to keep the phones and all that stuff safe and charged, because we are seasoning a lot more electronics, you're looking at 560,000 roughly.
yeah, 560.
And if you go to the, and this is just me spitballing, communications about all inclusive, I'm talking everything, you're looking at 78 or 58. Jail maintenance is the big one, that's 1 million, right over $1 million. A big part of that's gonna be, like I said, the ceiling of the building. Yeah, and the insurance. The detention side is about 1.2. And that's just a rough estimate. 1.2. The detention side. If they end up getting everything they asked for, it'd be about 1.2.
So altogether, it's about 16 million?
Oh, no, 1.2.
No, I'm talking about the total budget.
Oh, between the jail and
Everything,
the
yeah.
enforcement?
Yes.
uh, Overall, about 39 million.
Okay.
And that's that is me doing my math in my head, and I'm not an accountant,
Right.
and I'm not good with numbers.
Thank you.
Justice Real Stafford?
Thank you, Judge Deakins. Now, I know that this is, all still in the planning phases, even still in the finding, contractor phase, but the proposed construction at the jail, is any, if that becomes finished and new staff is needed and all that kind of stuff, is that factored in anywhere into 2024? Or are y'all looking further out into the future with that?
I would say that the budget that is presented is if that is not there.
Okay,
So, for an example, I know our generator is 20 years old, and is probably going to be replaced before too long. So, I mean, that's several $1 million just for the generator. That's factored in, but that's not factored in here, because we don't look at trying to replace that next year. We might.
yeah,
So we do have some stuff that this could increase if that didn't go through, but this has nothing to do with that side of it. It's not factored at all.
okay, all right, thank you.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. Okay, well, I took the sheriff total budget, 11,455,929, and then the jail total budget, 23,299,177, and I came up with 34,755,106. I think, yeah, 34 million. You said 39, but maybe where I'm off is that what I was looking at here for these totals did not include the personnel and the other capital stuff.
It may. I know it does not include the capital, because the capital is not going to be, it really ain't even talked about tonight. I just want to let you know we do have some coming. So I know it does not include the capital. As far as the personnel cost, I know like the slide was showing as far as what you all have on your computers, the ask price may not be the same as what Central Square is showing because of the ordinance that passed in the 81 ordinance that passed, so that may be off a little bit. But that, I don't think, did you include the jail maintenance? Or the communications?
I'm sorry?
The communications?
No, I did not include
So,
that.
I mean, I did, like I said, I just kind of
Okay.
ballparked it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think I'm off that much, but I may be off $1 million if my numbers, like I said.
Okay.
Sheriff?
Thank you all.
Hey, I know it's, we're already an hour and 15 into this, but if you could just allow us for just a minute, I've kind of tasked Chief Tabor, and for those of you that may not know his background, he was 35 years at the Fayetteville Police Department, 13 years of that as the police chief, 2 years as our U.S. Marshal for the Western District. So he's got a broad knowledge of law enforcement outside of the sheriff's office. So I've kind of tasked him with kind of keeping up with the salaries that are going on around the region. I talked about it at the very beginning, but if you would allow just him to come up and just speak briefly about what we see this trend in law enforcement, and kind of just to get you prepped. At some point, I know we're gonna, this body will come together and talk about salaries for all the county employees. But Chief Tabor's kind of put together some stuff. Some of it's just in his mind, some of it he's got written down, but if y'all would allow, I'd like him to come up and get a couple minutes in front of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Sheriff. Good evening, everyone. The sheriff asked me to do this in 2 minutes, and I don't think there's any way I can do it in 2 minutes, but I'll try not to make it an hour. Forgive me, okay, I'll remember that. New to county government, so forgive me if I call the judge the mayor and you council members. I'll try to do my best, but that's, I want to touch just on a couple things that Captain McConnell talked about. First of all was J.P. Lyons' questions about the salaries. You know, there was a couple there that there were some really big differences in, and we were actually on the phone with the comptroller up to the 11th hour of this meeting trying to see what the difference was. And I think maybe we decided, well, first of all, we'll get on the same page, you know, at some point in the future, so we're not just throwing out numbers that are $500,000 apart. He being the comptroller was pulling some numbers out of the county's financial software, and it based on current salaries, and it looked like what had happened, that maybe that software had not calculated those adjustments that Captain McConnell talked about back in June or July of adding those 20 pay periods of 6 hours. So that may be the difference, but anyway, we were on the phone trying to work that out with the comptroller at the 11th hour. We ran out of time. And then I was gonna say for JP Dennis's benefit, and he walked out, but a lot of those flat things, obviously we know everything's up, you know, whatever, 6, 8, 10%, but I'll try to give you an example. that if, you know, if we've got a certain line item and we're in, whatever we're in, September almost, and we calculate that out for the rest of the year, and we see that we're going to be at 85 or 90% of what was budgeted last year, 85 or 90% gives us 10 or 15% for that inflation for next year. So that's why that line item doesn't grow, because you missed the first part of what I was saying. I was trying to explain why some of those items are flat. And if our projection is we're not going to spend that whole line item budget for this year, and there's enough room for inflation, that's why we don't inflate that line item. Okay, on to salaries. So I've been involved in law enforcement in Northwest Arkansas for about 40 years. I think for that whole 40 years that county deputies have lagged behind in pay. You know, most of the time it's not very significant. Now, I know that's different for everybody, but since coming out of COVID, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, you can't look at a newspaper, a Facebook post or anything. Coming out of COVID, law enforcement across the country, and especially here in Northwest Arkansas, it's just shot through the ceiling. It's just unbelievable how much law enforcement pay and benefits have gone up. And when I talk about benefits, I looked at a post the university made just the other day, and you get 90% off your tuition. Well, I don't know if y'all have paid for university lately, but 90% off your tuition if you're working over there is huge. Fayetteville's paying a $10,000 sign-in bonus if you come to work. They pay night shift differential. I can go on and on. Bilingual pay. And so it's not just the base salary, it's all the extras that go with it. So the deputy's pay has gone from a little bit to behind over the last couple of years to a whole lot behind when you add base pay plus all the incentives that are out there that these other, and when I say other, I'm mostly talking about in Northwest Arkansas, but we did look at Jonesboro, Craighead County, Hot Springs, Garland County, but we typically don't lose people to those agencies. Typically they go to Prairie Grove or Fayetteville, State Police, Rogers. So that's who we're competing with, and we've kind of developed this saying, it's cheaper to retain than train. So we think it's cheaper to keep our people than to hire them new and train them. Let's see, where do I want to go from there? Our the county has a software program that we own. The HR director put a police officer into that position. It graded out as a grade 17. And if you do that, that's like $27 an hour, and we're currently paying just a few cents over $19 an hour. So you can see the discrepancy there. And I won't get into specifics, but most of your area agencies are starting off about $25 to $26 an hour, something like that, and we're at 19. Juvenile detention officers are making more than our patrol deputies because you've seen some of them come forward and y'all have increased their grades and stuff just recently. So we feel like we really have to get our enforcement side patrol deputies. The detention folks got a raise at the first of the year. They got the COLA 4.6%, but the enforcement side did not get that 4.6. Some of you will remember back in 18, this court passed an ordinance to basically, I'm not quoting, but to keep the pay competitive, and at that time you matched Fayetteville PD's pay. 2020 rolled along again. That's when COVID hit. You know, the world was coming to an end, so it didn't happen in 2020, but again in 2021, that ordinance was amended to match Fayetteville PD's pay. So that's currently where we're at. So I say all that to say in the future, whenever you guys are ready to talk about salary increases, we're going to be proposing an ordinance that will once again amend that 2018 ordinance that will be matching Fayetteville PD's. And when I say matching Fayetteville PD's, it's a little confusing. If you just look at Fayetteville PD's base pay and what we're proposing as base pay, we're still about 5% below what Fayetteville PD shows as a base rate, because Fayetteville PD's base rate has 104 hours of holiday pay figured in their base rate. So even though I say we're going to match Fayetteville, if you just looked at our pay scales, we would still be about 5% lower if you just looked at them, because they've got an extra 104 hours. So I say all that, the cost of that is somewhere in the ballpark of about $1.3 million without benefits. So JP Lemmy can keep adding over there. And I think that if I remember correctly, the benefits were about $350,000 on that. So that's what we will be bringing forward at some point for the court consider as far as pay raises when it comes to the enforcement side of things.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Chief Tabor. Is the enforcement side of the sheriff's department, are y'all on a step program? Isn't that what we matched?
That's correct.
Fayetteville, so that way they wouldn't lag behind?
That's correct. So we actually have 4 pay plans at the sheriff's office. We have the civilians that are just on like every other county employee. You have the enforcement side step plan, you have the detention side step plan, and then you have the communication side step plan.
So where are we lacking? Where are the gaps that we still didn't keep up? If, I thought this was supposed to,
Well, it's supposed to be, the ordinance
the
says you
tool to
evaluate it
keep
every
up.
2 years.
pardon?
I believe the ordinance says that was passed is that the court will look at it every 2 years. So at some point till you look at it, you're gonna lag behind. Now, I'm talking about just the enforcement.
It did say every 2 years we would reconsider it. No, I'm serious, because,
I believe so. And I think it said odd number of years, but that got thrown out of whack because it was supposed to be looked at in 2020, implemented in 2021, and that didn't happen. It didn't get looked at till 2021 and
where
implemented in 22.
okay, that's where I'm missing.
Yeah, so it got
The-
off a year because of COVID.
That's why I'm like, I don't remember that 2-year.
So it actually happened in 18 and then in 21, I believe.
Okay,
That's when it actually happened because of COVID.
so
And
is
anybody back
this
there
step,
correct me if I'm wrong
okay, is
about
the
that.
step program working? But we need to fine tune it, and it just needs, well, I mean, I thought we put this mechanism in place so that.
I believe
way
the
we wouldn't
step
let-
plan for law enforcement is the correct thing to do. You never want to have a merit-based system for law enforcement. I would say that every law enforcement agency around works with a step plan. And the reason you don't want it merit-based anyway is just because you don't want an officer thinking, if I go out and write 1,000 tickets to people or make 1,000 arrests, I'm gonna get a better evaluation, so my raise is higher. So
Oh,
that's
sure.
why step plans are pretty normal for
No,
law
I
enforcement.
understand. I just want to make it the best that we can. And if it's not the best we can, then, number one,
think it
why
is as long
isn't
as we
it? And
keep
what do
up.
we need to do? Okay, then what are we not doing? And what do we need to do to keep up?
Well, I think the ordinance would always need to be maintained by the
Right.
court. And the
Okay.
money will always, in my mind, need to be appropriated separately from the ordinance. And so there will
Okay.
always be,
I'm just
if I'm,
trying to get my,
yeah, if I'm trying to
that
simplify this,
gap.
there'll always be quorum court action needed, even
thank you.
with a good step play plan.
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine. I just don't remember.
And we follow that.
Sure. Justice Lyons?
Thank you. So you brought up something that's very real, better to retain than to train. What do you guys estimate your training cost is to bring in a new person and get them up to speed to?
I can't answer that at the sheriff's office. I've done those calculations in years past at the PD, but I'm not familiar that we've done that at the sheriff's office.
Is that something we can get in the future?
Yeah, I think we can get that. I mean, obviously, you're sending somebody to 12 or 13 weeks
Oh,
to the
yeah.
academy. They're doing another 16 weeks, right? I mean, so I
I'm
think
not,
you
I'm
come up
not
with it.
questioning, I agree with the preference, right? I'm curious about the numbers.
Yeah, so back to JP Ecky's question, I think the step plan is right. I think it works as long as we do keep up. So, I don't believe the ordinance says we will follow Fayetteville PD, but that's what's always happened in the past. Fayetteville PD evaluates theirs every 2 years in the March, April. And then so, if everything was perfect, after they evaluated theirs, see where they were going, and then sometime about now, after they do theirs, we would bring something forward for 1/1 of the next year to match that.
Justice Real Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. What's the latest number on the number of unfilled job openings you have right now, and what
Yeah,
departments are they
so
in?
this changes from minute to minute almost, but in the detention side, the last I checked, we had 31. And on the enforcement side, we had 9. We've been luckily and been able to hire. We sold a ex-Benton County deputy and an ex-Fayetteville PD officer on the enforcement side, so we'll be able to cut that down a little bit just in the last couple of weeks. And I think one in dispatch maybe.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. I just would like to point out, I also think that it's not just the salaries. I mean, also with the jail overcrowding like it is, do you see that that's making it difficult to keep or to hire and retain?
Oh, I definitely think it's making it hard to retain. I don't know about hiring because people don't know what they're getting into till they're there. But definitely retaining, yes. I mean, being that many spots open, people get burnt out having to work overtime. Major Denzer talks about, we had our highest count that I'd ever seen, maybe highest he'd ever seen, last Saturday morning of 833 people in jail. So obviously, you know, when we should have 25 detention officers working in the jail as a whole, we have 15 or 16. So it makes it more dangerous. People are burnt out because they're having to work so much overtime. And so I think there's lots of things that play into that.
Thank you.
The sheriff's had an idea, and I'll just throw it out here. I don't know if he wants me to or not, but I'll speak on his, you know, just in the last little bit, and don't quote me on the numbers, but the last salary pullback from last corner, it was about $800,000 in the jail and about $300,000 on enforcement side. And in the first quarter, I don't remember the numbers, they were smaller, but it's a significant about 1.5, 1.6 million that's been pulled back in salaries. He has this thought of, let's give the people that are down there working shorthanded and working all this overtime some sort of bonus to reward them for the people that show up and work. So you may be seeing that in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Sheriff Cantrell, do you have some closing comments?
Well, listen, I don't envy your positions, your jobs in the legislative branch of government. You've got some hard decisions to make because every person that comes before you is going to have valid requests. They're going to have to, they know what it takes to run their office. The judge knows what it takes to run his departments, all 17 or 25 of them, however many he's got. I can't believe what he has to say grace over. The assessor's got needs, you know, everybody's going to have these needs, so I don't envy what you all have to do, but I appreciate you taking the time to ask good questions and to engage us in this conversation. And we're available at any time. Anybody wants to talk via phone, email, or you want to sit down for a cup of coffee and discuss this further and get down further into the weeds, all we need to do is just have you reach out to us. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate the effort that you all put in to make this county better.
I appreciate you all being here and coming so prepared this evening. If the justices haven't figured it out, this is always a very iterative process, and so I appreciate you guys' efforts and staying tuned, and we'll continue to walk through this process over the next few weeks. With that, our final item on the agenda tonight is a public comment period. We have a 12-minute public comment period limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comments this evening?
Oh, is it on?
You're good.
Okay. Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. Good evening. I think it's a first to sit behind rows of law enforcement in a county quorum court meeting. So that was a new experience with all of the folks that showed up tonight. But I agree and echo the sentiments of the sheriff. I mean, this is, you know, a big task before you. This is a tremendous budget. We have gone through COVID years. We all know a lot of us are doing a lot with, you know, the same amount of income, and so taxpayers do feel, you know, quite stretched. And so I would challenge us to think about, there have been a lot of demonstrated needs that we have not been able yet to solve for. You have a potential burden with the crisis stabilization unit of $30,000 a month. I saw in one line item on the sheriff's budget, $550,000 for overtime. You know, I have sat in minute detail with this body for several years as we have continued to put money towards law enforcement with openings, with staffing, saying if we just give a little bit more, if we just spend a little bit more, that we're going to close these gaps and we're going to retain individuals, but yet our retention has continued to struggle. Anyone who's worked with hiring or in HR, we know that the investment in people, right, is incredibly expensive. And so I'd hope that, you know, this body and our sheriff's department will really talk about how we look at how do we keep folks around once we've invested in them, because we do know that it is much more expensive to continue to recruit and to find new individuals. But why do folks not get into this, this work, or why are folks not filling these roles? You know, in November, we did have a very resounding vote that we didn't want to expand incarceration. It's incredibly costly, both in the families in our community, but also to taxpayers. And so I would really ask this body to really consider the additional needs whenever they're looking at all of the budgets, to consider those unmet needs that oftentimes end up in our jail. The fact that we'll have pretrial services coming forward, and that the community is really asking for all of these things to be budgeted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening?
Thank you. My name is Beth Koger. I live at 3661 Embry Drive in Fayetteville. What I'd like to mention is that about the retention of employees at the sheriff's office, and I know that the sheriff, and they work hard on that. And Garland County, when they had this issue, they actually hired a consultant to come in and help them find out why they were having so much trouble retaining help employees. So I would be very supportive of that if that was something the sheriff wanted to look into. And another thing, back to my thing about charging prisoners copay, I just wish that you would each think about that, because I hear it a lot in my work, but I don't know that you all do. And when we have someone in the jail, and I don't think we should be charging them to see the doctor, but at least let's think about if we could lower it. And I will try to get it on the county services agenda. I'm not always able to get stuff on the agenda, but I want you to think about that for the next time. Thank you.
Public comments? Seeing none, will be adjourned.